Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's event on Saudi Arabia in 2025, Vision 2030 Progress Update, and U.S.-Saudi Relations. I'm Jonathan Panikoff, Director of the Scowcroft Middle East Security Initiative at the Atlantic Council. The initiative has over a dozen lines of effort that aim to equip policymakers with forward-looking analysis into U.S. and global strategic interests in the Middle East, drawing on deep networks and leading the think tank community in public and private convenings, often enabling folks who can't always come together for political or policy reasons to do so. Today's conversation comes at a critical moment. Just a couple of days after President Trump visited the kingdom as his first planned official state visit, underscoring the key role the kingdom is set to play in U.S. foreign policy and highlighting the evolving dynamics of the bilateral relationship. The panel also comes nearly a decade since the launch of Vision 2030 and as Saudi Arabia prepares to host the G20 presidency next year. The expert participants in today's panel will explore the kingdom's Vision 2030 progress to date, the opportunities and obstacles ahead, and what all of it means for the evolving trajectory of U.S.-Saudi relations under the second Trump administration. And we could not ask for a more exceptional panel. It includes the Secretary General of the Digital Cooperation Organization, one of the region's most prominent venture capitalists, a former U.S. ambassador in the region and the president for regions at Bechtel, and of course, the man responsible for helping to build Diriyah. The formal introductions will be made in just a moment by our moderator, Adel Hamaizia, our non-resident senior fellow with the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Middle East Security Initiative and managing director of Highbridge Advisory. Adel brings deep expertise in policy, risk, and investment strategy across the Middle East, the Balkans, and Africa. And we're fortunate to have him guide today's discussion. And as you listen in, I would encourage you to submit your questions throughout the event via askac.org, which will also be linked in the chat. And with that, I'll turn it over to Adel. Adel?
Well, thank you so much, Jonathan, for that super kind introduction. And let me just take this opportunity to thank Josie Pelayo at the Atlantic Council for working to make this session happen. I'm especially honored, especially delighted, not only for moderating this virtual panel with these movers and shakers, business leaders, policymakers, but I'm also fortunate to be able, I think they can tell otherwise, people I consider to be able to call my friends. So I'm delighted to have our colleagues with us today and our friends. So this morning or evening, depending on where you are, we aim to have a cool, candid, collegiate, coffee-style conversation. I always say cortado is preferred on the contours, the connections, the collaborations that were born of last week's Trump visit, or maybe help to encapsulate the US-Saudi relationship, as well as benefiting from a Vision 2030 progress update. In fact, it is exactly 1 week since the US delegation landed in Riyadh. And I realized earlier, something Jonathan almost alluded to, I thought, is that it's exactly 8 years to the day that the first Trump admin arrived in Riyadh on their maiden trip on May 20th of 2017. Feels like yesterday, COVID, warts and all. So last week, alongside the announcement of lifting sanctions on Syria, we saw the largest set of commercial agreements on record signed between US and Saudi at some 600 billion. Of course, numbers may move towards $1 trillion. That's what we hear. These agreements spanned tech. I'm looking at Deemah, energy, infrastructure, Bechtel, hospitality, sports, entertainment, aerospace, and of course, defense. In fact, we saw the announcement of the largest defense sales agreement in history at $142 billion. Some have claimed many of the figures to be hyperbole or against a longer term horizon. And whether these agreements include something old, something new, something borrowed, not necessarily blue, I would argue that regardless, these agreements really sort of ratify the US-Saudi relationship's new chapter. And it really tells us that these guys really mean business. There is much to do to grow beyond the trade figures of $26 billion when it comes to US-Saudi exchange. US has a mini surplus. We know we like that in DC. or on the hill. And until recently, Saudi investment into US was something like the 10 billion mark. Of course, the numbers do not always include private capital, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking forward to a stronger US-Saudi commercial relationship. Of course, we want tech transfer. As the kingdom continues, we always pull the Ds up at the Atlantic Council, the Ds of diversifying, digitalizing, decarbonizing, and de-rentierizing its economy, of course, with the help of, I'm going to try and be funny here and say, Deemah from the DCO, Diriyah Jerry, and Dokhan Amal. Sorry, Ambassador Justin, I can't think of a D for you. And to add to that alliteration, or rather that anchor, that affinity, that addiction, that affliction, association and alignment, to anchor myself around alliteration, we'd like to hear from our colleagues today on this Vision 2030 quest for the C's of competition, competitiveness, comparative advantage, connectivity, shout out DCO. And in the words of Mr. Trump at the US-Saudi or Saudi-US summit last week, we want a region of commerce, not chaos. We'll also be thinking about the eyes of industry, infrastructure, incentives, institutions, investment. And while business must also consider Trump tweets, truths, tariffs, treasuries, these trade routes, and relationships with Tehran, I saw just this week that Saudi has recommenced flights between Tehran and Saudi after a decade. We hope this means good things for the region. And to throw in some final timelines as we wrap up this mini intro is really to think about the fact that in just 1 year, we have the North American World Cup, Canada, US, Mexico. I believe Saudi and many other teams will be in the US, crossing from Kansas to Mexico City. If anybody can guess this, how many days until World Cup 2034? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, nobody knows that. It's 3,400 days. And in 1960 days, we have the Expo 2030. Even sooner, we have the Asian Winter Games in 1,322 days. So we'll come to some of the big achievements and challenges of Vision 2030, some of the big KPIs, particularly the ones that we think about are increasing non-oil exports, a la diversification, female labor force participation, testament to who's on the panel with us today, home ownership, and of course, private sector contribution as some of the standouts. Of course, FDI, there are question marks, and we want to see more catch up. Just to finish and encapsulate with a few questions I've been thinking about, with this sort of lower oil price environment, and I would like to provoke my colleagues as well, and in turn, fiscal break-even prices above comfort zones, producers such as Saudi Arabia, of course, will have to revisit non-essential capital expenditure. Again, that's subjective. What is essential and what is non-essential? That's an open question. Where will we see strategic reprioritization? A question I think about again. What for debt markets as Saudi just recently reached A+ status, maybe more of an appetite for embracing the markets? What for the role of national champions? What for the role of the PIF? If this is not permanent capital at Diriyah, what do exit horizons look like for PIF companies? And then, of course, thinking about the DCO and the Digital Cooperation Organization, what are the digital divides and dividends associated with becoming this AI hub, this AI superhouse? We saw various agreements just last week with NVIDIA et al. Can we have a red and a blue supply chain, or does it have to be purple? And I'm not talking about the Republicans or the Democrats. So these are big questions, right? And then finally, can we MAGA? Can we make America great again? And can we make Arabia great again? With no further ado, I'd like to introduce our star-studded lineup. I am going to be asset stripping them, not least because I'm speaking to you off my phone. Full disclosure, my laptop failed on me, which was unfortunate, but here we are. I'm delighted to introduce Her Excellency Deemah AlYahya, who's the Secretary General of the Digital Cooperation Organization. She's a leading tech diplomat, digital economy expert. The DCO, just to offer the mandate, is the world's first standalone intergovernmental body dedicated to advancing digital transformation. Again, I'm asset stripping, or we'd be here all day. These are illustrious citizens. Deemah serves on the board of the Saudi National Bank, the Saudi Federation of Cybersecurity, Programming and Drones, and the E-Commerce Council, and has a long history working in the digital space across both sectors and geographies. We have Jerry Inzerillo, our second Saudi citizen our second American Freudian. Second American citizen on the panel, Group Chief Executive Officer of Diriyah Gate Company, a $64 billion giga project. Jerry is really renowned as one of the world-leading hospitality visionaries. For those that were watching last week, Jerry was almost the common denominator between the two leaders when it came to the hospitality, the protocol, and the lavender. He's responsible for all the work undertaken by the company and its management. He was the CEO of Forbes Travel Guide. He was one of the key figures behind organizations such as the One and Only. Jerry knows that that is my favorite hotel in Dubai. I don't know if there'll be one coming to Saudi Arabia anytime soon. And of course, he served as president of Kurzner Entertainment. We have Ambassador Justin Siberell, who is the president of Bechtel for regions, previously covering Europe, Middle East, and Africa, previously served as ambassador to the region in Bahrain, next door to Saudi Arabia, across the King Fahd Causeway. He also serves on the White House advisory on Africa and a very long CV working as a career diplomat at state. We have, last but not least, my friend Amal Dokhan, who just landed in time, and we were wondering whether traffic was going to be a cruel opponent, but it hasn't worked out. So we're happy she's with us. Amal is the managing partner at Global 500 Global, and also leads the Siberell 500 Fund. She is one of the leading angel investors in the region, bringing together education, entrepreneurship, and the shabab, the youth. Guys, that was a lot from me. Now, jumping right in, before we sort of get into sort of slightly more substantive questions, in one word, one sentence, just to ensure everybody's with us around the world, from San Francisco to Shanghai, from Boston to Riyadh, I want to ask one word or one sentence that describes the trip last week. Deemah, over to you first.
It's a testament for continuous prosperity. I can go on and on, but that's my one word.
Great. Jerry.
Astonishment or credibility, because with the president not being back in 8 years, he was just astounded as to the reforms on all levels, sociological, commercial, diplomatic. He was just blown away.
Absolutely. Justin.
I'd say reaffirmation of the importance of the partnership between the United States and Saudi Arabia. And I think to echo Jerry's point, reaffirmation of the Vision 2030, because as was noted, the president came out kind of at the initiation of the program or shortly thereafter, and then was able to see it after 8 years. And I think it was a reaffirmation of the vision itself and the progress that's been made and the progress is yet to be made. So I'd say reaffirmation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Amal.
I would say the most entrepreneurial, biggest symbolic actually message to the world, honestly, about the strategic role that Saudi is playing and about to play, you know, and it will have a biggest impact, definitely. So signaling in the language of VCs, it sends a huge signal about Saudi.
Absolutely. And I think one thing we maybe failed to mention in our intro is that this is also the 80th anniversary since FDR and Ibn Saud met. And if that was Quincy 1.0, there are many that are describing this as a Quincy 2.0, focused more on AI and partnership and less energy, relatively less energy and security. And if I can just come back to you for a very quick, what kind of excites you in terms of the opportunity between US and Saudi going forward? We'll come to the difficult stuff later, but one single opportunity that excites you in the same order. Deemah.
Well, I would say a digital economy and the advancement of emerging technologies. And I'm not saying only AI, but the potential of innovating new emerging technologies going forward. We truly believe that Saudi is positioned the right way to become the digital powerhouse of the region. And therefore, the US putting hands in hands with Saudi enables a platform for innovation and a more innovative future for digital.
Absolutely. Jerry.
I think two quick takeaways. I think the tremendous relationship between a very young society, just a reminder, the median age in Saudi Arabia is 29.1. I think the exchange of the great Saudi students who were educated in America coming home to play a big part in Vision 2030. And then, of course, from my base, the astonishing upside on global tourism, and especially tourism between the two great G20 countries of America and Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. Thank you, Justin.
I think what's interesting is the balance in the relationship. This is not a one-way relationship in the way maybe it might have been perceived as in previous decades. This is very much a two-way partnership. And so you take things, I mean, to Deemah's point, you take a certain advancement of technology in the United States, you match that with the ambition, the capital, and the applicability of that technology in a society that's really advancing like Saudi Arabia, and you have true partnerships. So I think the partnership opportunities are really exciting in the relationship today.
Absolutely. Amal.
I believe positioning Saudi as a tech hub, in this region is a very important one, as it will attract, capital. It will attract entrepreneurs, developers, all types of talents is what you need in this world to make the vision actually reach its fullest potential. And for us as VCs and entrepreneurs, we do require this momentum happening. So all these announced agreements are bringing infrastructure, and on top of that, you build the other layers. So to me, this is actually a great milestone. And we already see the results of that and the symptoms of things happening, beyond the visit, obviously.
Absolutely. No, thank you for those sort of top line takeaways. I'd now like to sort of dive in a little bit. I'm going to ask you all for 3 to 4 minutes to give us a little bit from your vantage point, the big achievements and challenges to your mind over the last 9 years. To think that next year we're going to be talking about a decade of Vision 2030 is beyond me, but here we are. And the rule is you cannot repeat what the person before you said. So there's going to be a little bit of flexibility reconfigurations going on here. And Deemah, you're the lucky one because you go first.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. We can go on and on with the things that we're very proud of.
I need challenges as well, by the way, not only achievements.
We'll come to that as well. But I would like to start, as a Saudi woman, I would like to start the women empowerment. And it warms our heart to see that not only have women got the opportunity to prosper in all sectors, but also to see that we have overachieved the targets of Vision 2030 from 17% of women in workforce in 2016 to now we're celebrating 37% of the participation of women. Participation of women means prosperity in society, means economical growth. So that's something we're very much proud of. Another achievement, diversification of economy. We do see the diversification increasing year over year with a percentage of 9.7% in average every year, and that brings in a lot of positivity on moving from an oil-based economy to a more diversified, and especially the digital economy plays a big role in that. Another thing that I will double down on, which is digital infrastructure. We see now in Saudi that more than 77% of Saudi is connected in terms of fiber optics with 5G connectivity, which is double the average on a global level. That gives a lot of potential, as Amal said, for startups, VCs, and companies to look at Saudi Arabia as a great platform and a launching pad for innovation. We also look at digital government. Digital government services has leapfrog from 2016 to today. While we see we are #1 when it comes to the Arab world, #2 when it comes to the G20 countries, and that goes from looking at the government from an egocentric to an ecocentric. And this is where we see all government entities coming together, collaborating, and creating the right omni-channels and the right user journeys for their citizens. So I would also conclude with NEOM as smart cities, and this is creating the right opportunity for innovators of the world to come and test and for Saudi to be the landmark of future innovations and giving the opportunities for the brain power of the world to come and test and experiment.
Thank you so much, Amal. Jerry.
Well, you know, it's so wonderful because there's hours of good news. So let me give you a little 3-minute recap. Diriyah is the birthplace of the kingdom. It's the ancestral home of Al Saud. It's the center of culture, heritage, and diplomacy for the G20 city and for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But in looking at diversification on non-oil revenue, when we designed Vision 2030, even with the blessing of being the custodian of the 2 holy mosques with the cities of Mecca and Medina, we had 16 million pilgrimages prior to COVID. We're now redesigning the cities to handle 30 million pilgrimages, which would be the life fulfillment of 30 million Muslims. What could be nicer than that? But already we have welcomed 100 million visits by December of 2023. So we went from 3% of GDP to 5.2% where we are now, on our way to 10% of GDP from tourism. Our Diriyah alone, which is a $64 billion project, the size of Beverly Hills sitting in the metroplex of Los Angeles, is 14.7 million square meters. Diriyah, the ancestral city in the master plans, based on the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Adel, is 14.2 million. So our staff now is 3,200. And we're filled with superstars like Her Excellency Deemah. And 83% of my staff are Saudi. 36% of my staff are Saudi women, 16% of which in management, and 14% of our staff from our community of Diriyah. The average age of my staff is 31. Now, you take me out, it probably drops to 24, but there's so
I thought we were
much
celebrating your 40th, Jerry, no?
Right. There's so much talent going forward. But now what we're also seeing, in addition to very positive labor and very positive GDP, is the quality of life for our citizens. Because in Vision 2030, we wanted to encourage all Saudis, not foreigners, to be outside at least 3 times a week for quality of life, sport and fitness and health. We've already finished 9 kilometers of parks. We've planted with smart city technology over 3.5 million trees and shrubs and bushes. Now you see thousands of Saudis jogging and walking and picnicking with their families and on bicycles. So you have a very happy society, very unified, very positive. The President of the United States said, people are so warm and inviting here, but you have an optimism and a positivity sociologically that you don't see in a lot of countries now, especially G20. My final point is that now this is one of the only governments in the world where the public sector is working as hard, if not harder, than the private sector. His Royal Highness, our Crown Prince and Prime Minister, works an 80-hour week. So that shows the focus. But now to be on time, to be on budget, where we're no longer theoretical, where now you can see a society transform, a society empowered, positive, optimistic, educated, very much believing in their future. The role of this great blessed kingdom and that of the Gulf itself will have substantial leadership because we have great leaders here that will benefit societies regionally and globally over decades to come.
Jerry, I'm going to head to Justin, but just before I do that, very briefly, could you just give me one challenge that isn't the oil price that keeps you up at night, or is something that we should be really cognizant of?
Yeah, I think, if someone says you're building a $64 billion project with 45,000 workers on the job every day, does that keep you up at night? Actually not. I'll surprise you with what keeps me up at night. We're doing so well that right now the kingdom has a tremendous need in industries that we never mastered on, right? But like we have spectacular talent in tech, in AI. Look at Her Excellency, in military, in energy, in medicine, in finance. But where we didn't have the expertise up till a few years ago, design, marketing, entertainment, tourism, we have to train before the Expo of 2030 and the World Cup 2034. And if you know our Crown Prince, it's only a matter of time before we announce an Olympic bid. Our big challenge right now is to train 2, 3, 4, 5 million people to enter the workplace with technical skills that we as a kingdom didn't previously in a diversified society have to emphasize. That's what keeps me up at night.
Thank you, Jerry. Ambassador, you go in and out of the kingdom as far as I'm aware. We'll come to the big announcements around Bechtel maybe a bit later. But just as somebody who is familiar with the kingdom, one of the largest US employers in the kingdom, if not the largest, correct me. For you, what are the big achievements and challenges you've seen, both during your time in government, but also in the private sector?
Sure. Well, first, we were talking about Vision 2030. I mean, it's a hugely ambitious program, visionary. It's literally attempting to transform the built environment and the lived experience of the Saudi public, residents, and visitors. It's really the most exciting infrastructure market in the world, by far. Everyone wants to be there: architects, designers, engineers, builders, suppliers. And the achievements are quite clear. I mean, they're there to see, and they're really building momentum toward the new Saudi Arabia that's been outlined by the Crown Prince. I mean, everybody who feels it, who spends time there, and I know you've done so as well, Adel. They're really harnessing the energy of the youthful population and offering new open opportunity for the country. And it's resulting in a significant economic diversification. When we talk about achievement, I think I heard at the business forum that 52% of the GDP is now comprised of non-oil economy, which is, I think, ahead of schedule for the transformation. Clearly, in female employment, quality of life improvements have been significant and unobvious. And as the giga projects begin to come online, you'll start to see more and more momentum building. And so it's quite an exciting horizon. I think it's important also to acknowledge that the energy sector, there's a major transformation underway as well. The Vision 2030 is resulting in a transformation and a rebalancing of the kingdom's energy mix. So major investments, of course, in renewable energy and solar power, long duration storage. And that's in addition to the tapping of the gas reserves in the Jafurah Basin and the South Ghawar field in the Eastern Province, which are enabling a substitute of natural gas for power production from historically crude oil use. And that's resulting in environmental improvements, improvements in air quality, and freeing up crude oil, of course, for either for export or for transformation into petrochemicals, which itself offers lots of opportunities. So sometimes the energy transformation gets lost in all of this, but it's equally significant and important and as part of the Vision 2030. Now, the challenges, I mean, are the kind to be expected to go along with such large, ambitious, and comprehensive building programs. There's internal competition for resources, access to labor, access to management capability, suppliers. Projects can get squeezed, and costs therefore need to be managed carefully, because if you have projects competing with one another, that can create an inflationary environment. So, and that's where I think, the national leadership, and of course you have project leaders like Jerry that have to manage those challenges, and it seems like in a very cooperative way across all of these major projects that are part of Vision 2030. And then obviously managing budget for such a wide range of projects is a challenge. One thing that's been quite important, I think, is the way in which the government has vested much of the responsibility into the PIF companies. with a deliberate effort, and I think Minister Al-Jadaan said this at the forum, to avoid the kind of boom-bust cycle that was, it's not unique to Saudi Arabia, by the way. Many countries that have historically relied on major resources as part of their, as the major input into the economy, have had these boom-bust cycles. And in Vision 2030, what sets it apart and makes it different is this establishment of sort of PIF leadership, where you are able to try to insulate against the boom-bust cycle. And that's very important, obviously, for contractors like Bechtel. And then I guess the one final thing, and this is rather parochial to the contractor sector, there has been a recognition that, the tier one contractors have struggled in Saudi Arabia. So PIF has made investments into 4 local contractors, big ones. And that's a reflection of a desire to deliver on the Vision 2030, but also to create national champions that can then compete even outside the kingdom one day. So I think there's a lot of thought being put into the project. There are challenges, of course, there would be, you'd expect that. But the adjustments are being made as necessary to maintain the momentum in the project.
Justin, just on that point, very interesting. So would it, we've had these conversations over the years. From what you just said, are we crowding in or crowding out the private sector as the PIF? Because what you just said would suggest there's a crowding in and a galvanizing of local national champions, no?
I think that's probably, you'd get different opinions from different people, but there's clearly new opportunity for the private sector in Saudi Arabia. And I know the PIF is actively looking for opportunities to bolster Saudi companies and help them scale up to the capability required to supply many of these programs. Part of the problem is it's not unique to Saudi Arabia. Your domestic supply chain has to also meet the moment, and you can't expect that to just turn on like a faucet. It has to be built over time. So there may be a lag a little bit in the capability of the domestic supply chain, but I think that's being built simultaneously, including by efforts led by Jerry Todd and others at the PIF to grow the local supply chain in coordination with the growth across the economy.
Absolutely, Jerry. We have 2 great Jerrys in the kingdom. Absolutely. Amal, from your standpoint, I know you focus more on the kind of entrepreneurial, the VC, the tech, the cool stuff. What do achievements and challenges look like to your mind?
Absolutely. But I have to echo and repeat one thing that Deemah has said. We as Saudi women, we must actually acknowledge, the pride that we go through and we feel every day, honestly. There is a drive and an energy that we live every day. And I say in my age, I wish I was younger. That's my statement. But we are all young to actually relive, and create with everybody, as we are surrounded with a young generation, actually, that achieves this vision. So our role becomes more of like strategic and really acknowledging the opportunity and uplifting and training. And as Jerry said, it's actually re-equipping those talents and preparing them to actually pave the way and lead the way. In terms of the opportunity, I think the vision have unlocked a very deep economy. It showed the depth that Saudi has, right? It unlocked all of these new sectors. So we're talking about the tourism, we're talking about entertainment, we're talking about sports, and we can go on, financial technologies. And the creation of solutions actually started, and it requires in the infrastructure, the regulations to actually keep up, with that. And what's happened, we always say that Saudi as a government have actually moved really fast when it comes to coping with all of the new technologies and coming up with sandboxes. So every entity, you will see that there is the central bank has a sandbox, and so many others as well. So I do believe that this momentum that's happening in the kingdom is helping us, as venture capitalists, as entrepreneurs, to figure out these opportunities and move fast, because resilience time is of the essence when it comes to entrepreneurs, and technologies. And honestly, it's been quite immense also opening the doors for us. If there is any challenges that we foresee, we run to the officials, to the government, to the entrepreneurs have lobbies and have groups where they actually influence, that policy. And most of the advisors that you see in the committee are actually entrepreneurs on the ground. So they do listen to the customer, which is the entrepreneur that's going through that journey. So this is all that momentum is attracting a lot of people to come. The movement, we're seeing entrepreneurs coming. So as opportunities unlock, you get the learning and the technology transfer and the learning by the diversity that's happening happening in the kingdom today. So you have all these nationalities coming and really seeing the potential of it. We run an accelerator, we see how that process actually happens every day. And I think I have to highlight also that diversification, component have enriched our portfolios, today, as we see what's being unlocked in terms of opportunities in Saudi, what are the agreements that are being done, and then you see that it adjusts. And because the government have been, digital for the longest time, it made integration so much easier. And that's in the essence of the vision, to actually create those technologies and pave the way, and enable the private sector. And as they said, it exceeded now 50%, of the impact on the GDP. So I think all of that momentum is creating this speed. And when we talk about challenges, I would tell you that the everyday actually dilemma is keeping up with what's happening in the kingdom and keeping up with, with all the changes, because we have these sessions and gatherings with all the regulators, with the entrepreneurs, and trying to listen really fast and make sure that we go in parallel with all the changes and make sure that we're keeping up with that. And we're producing also these talents and, the right VCs and also the entrepreneurs that are coming into it. So I think our issue is just we need to be equipped. We need our eyes, our ears, and our minds to be always ready to absorb, all what's happening today. But it's been really a great momentum. We started the movement of entrepreneurship around, early 2010, in Saudi, where we invested, in some of these companies. And man, I always, when they talk about anything and I say, listen, you can get everything in minutes today, done. Prior to that, you need a longer time to do it. So honestly, it's quite joyful to talk about this journey today.
One just mini follow-up, Amal.
Sure.
Jerry spoke of this equilibria between public sector work ethic and private sector work ethic. Public sector salaries are quite attractive. How are you seeing a Shabab, like they come out of King Fahd University or King Saud or King Abdul Aziz or Princess Nora? What, like in terms of the tracks, what are the push and pull factors today if it wasn't the family, or like what is different now?
I let me tell you one thing. My daughter graduated college and she works at NEOM. I'm giving you the most personal information over here. She's living the dream as a young scientist, practicing, at NEOM and really doing what she's supposed to do in a greenhouse, right? I think, everyone who's graduating today, whether they are coming from abroad or in Saudi, they see the potential and they want to be part. Some want to be part of the public sector. We want that. We want those educated young people to actually bring all the minds and all of the research and all of the ideas that they got and bring it to the kingdom. But then you also have the others that want to be the disruptors. You actually see the balance. I do a lot of workshops, talks in universities, and I see and hear, what's happening. We do these kind of Q&As, and there is a lot of excitement about both. I do agree that, yes, the public sector could offer much more attractive actually pay, and it's a hard thing to decide for a young person. I always say, if you got the opportunity, go work. It's amazing. It's great. Get the experience. And then when the venture opportunity comes, you can do it. But you'll be surprised, Adel, that a lot of people that made it up high in the government, within certain really high levels, have actually quit their jobs and started ventures when they made it after 20 years and 25 years and started, startup companies. So younger people working with these caliber is actually bringing a whole new equilibrium to Saudi Arabia. So I do believe it's a dance. You're going to have to face that. But even these salaries will adjust itself, as everybody in this call today. Yes, it started really high because we needed the best of the talent, but eventually, as things equalizes, it's going to actually normalize. Absolutely. And it becomes a playing field. I do believe this is going to be the reason. Yeah, everybody will have hopefully equal choices, when they come out of college.
Absolutely. I know we have some people on the who are dialed in who are very keen on labor market segmentation, and Saudi Arabia is a brilliant case in point. In this next sort of call it around, what I just want to do is come to you all for sort of three big things you'd like the world. We have politicians on the line, we have academics, analysts, business leaders. If you could just give us maybe three things that you want the world to know about your space or your project or your area. And Deemah, to pick on you first, could you also incorporate this role of digital diplomacy? Saudi Arabia is now a convening place for the world, as we've seen, with as a fora for many of the the biggest meetings, both in terms of problem solving, but also in more positive areas such as the digital space. The very nature of the very fact that DCO is based in Riyadh tells you a little bit about Saudi's role in the world and plans for its role in the world. Could you maybe speak to that, and we'll move on to giga projects, infrastructure, and VC shortly thereafter?
Definitely, Adel. Now, we've looked at diplomacy all these years. It's all about collective interests between countries and between borders. Now, technology is serving these interests and influencing the way that we live, the quality of our lives, the ease of doing business, providing more transparency and efficiency. So therefore, technology is becoming an enabler for the prosperity of countries, and therefore countries now, when they discuss either trade agreements, we have now services and data. It's not just products anymore. When we talk about taxation, we're looking at data as well, and the companies that are serving the population is not only do not have to be physically present in every country. We're looking at AI. And when we look at AI, and this is what keeps me up at night, is that that AI divide that is increasing. $300 billion has been invested last year for AI innovation, but a handful of countries only contributed. So where is the others? And therefore, we're going to have nations that are going to be left behind. And if they don't have a seat on the table, they do not get the first right movers in terms of computing power, for instance. So diplomacy is very important, and especially tech diplomacy nowadays. Not only in terms of communicating or negotiating the best interest between two countries, but even between a technology company and innovators and between the companies. We look at agreements on a global level. For instance, AI ethical agreements. Who sits on the table and negotiates these treaties and these charters are the diplomats, and the diplomats have to have the technical knowledge to take on these conversations when it comes to either unifying cross-border data flows or AI ethics treaties or even digital trade. So therefore, nowadays, tech diplomacy is increasing its importance, especially when it comes to the negotiations with the private sector, which are becoming bigger than the GDPs of countries when it comes to their market size. Another aspect as well is when it comes to tech diplomacy, it's all about being the facilitator of cooperation and collaboration together. So what we're trying to do is disrupt multilateralism as we know it, and bringing in all the voices together of the ecosystem, from the governments to private sector to civil society, and connecting the supply with the demand. And this is a new era when it comes to diplomacy.
Deemah, could you just give for the audience just a one-liner on the mandate of the DCO?
Oh, sure, definitely. The DCO has been created to accelerate the digital economy of our member states. And these were like-minded nations came together with the belief that for them to diversify their economies, they have to bet on digital economy. But for them to do that, they can't do it alone. So therefore, for them to accelerate that growth, they need to not reinvent the wheel, but to benefit from other success stories from the countries around them. And this is where we do truly believe that every country has a competitive advantage that can be a solution for a challenge to another country. In a nutshell, the mandate of DCO is GDP and job creation for each and every of our member country, representing also the voice and giving them the voice and a seat on the table in the global landscape when it comes to digital.
Thank you, Deemah. I'm asking my colleagues in the audience, if you have questions, and some I've started to receive, to use askac.org. That is askac.org. Jerry, three big things we need to know about Diriyah as an embodiment of Vision 2030, Diriyah as the favorite son, as I think you described it, or somebody described it to me once.
Well, the most positive thing is that all are welcome. You know, we only opened up to tourism in September of 2019, and we were setting world records. If you listen to WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council, United Nations Tourism, because we were doing 55,000 visas a week, but then we had to shut down to 2 years of COVID, and then we came roaring back, as I mentioned, that we did 100 million visits by the end of 2023, on our way to 150 million visits by 2030, including the new 58 million square meter King Salman Airport in preparation for our growth. So I think the big thing, number one, would be all are welcomed. Come and see a beautiful kingdom. Come and witness Saudi authenticity and the legendary Saudi hospitality. You know, a lot of people still don't know this, but out of the GCC, the 5 other countries other than Saudi, geographically are quite small, beautiful, and with unique personalities. But those 5 countries would fit into the American state of California, whereas Saudi Arabia is 5 times the size of California. So it's a very big, beautiful country. You know, Egypt is so famous for the Red Sea, Sharm el-Sheikh, etc. But Saudi Arabia has 45% of the Red Sea, right? And you have Jeddah, which is the gateway not only to the Red Sea, but to the 2 holy cities of Mecca and Medina. You got the largest sand desert, UNESCO, the empty quarter. You got La Lhasa, largest palm groves. You got 2 bodies of water on both east and west coast. You got 8 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. I mean, you've got the spectacular resorts that we're building now in the Red Sea. So there's so much to do. So our Diriyah is culture, heritage. Come and witness 300 years of Saudi hospitality, graciousness, culture. You know, when President Trump came in 2017, he did the famous Saudi sword dance, which is the Arda, but that originates at Diriyah. So now this time we didn't want him to do the same thing twice. So we had 300 of the Samri dances on the drums sitting. He just loved it, right? So there's so much to do here. Saudi cuisine, Saudi hotels. I'm building 42 new hotels just in Diriyah alone. So 3 takeaways. All are welcome. Please come and see us. Tourism through the country is going to change people's perceptions of this great nation. A lot of people don't know that it snows up in the north in Tabuk, but they'll see when we do the Asian Winter Games in our Neom city of Trojena in 2029. And the third thing is that there's nothing better in life than to hang out with young, positive, energetic, optimistic people, and we are packed with them, men and women, which I'm so proud of. So those are my 3 takeaways.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I have maybe a Middle Eastern bias. I was in Beverly Hills. You mentioned Beverly Hills just a fortnight ago, and I can definitely say the food scene in Diriyah has a lot going for it and competes on par, if not more. One thing I did just want to sort of put forward to you, when it comes to this sort of tradition, modernity, how are you thinking about preserving tradition while embracing AI, decarbonization, and all the incredible things that were on show last week during the presidential visit? How do you think of those issues, maybe in a very sort of short reply, if you can?
Yeah, it's very simple. A lot of people think that there's a conflict or a tension between the preservation of tradition and modernity, especially as it relates to tech. Quite the opposite. They flow very well together. I'll give you an idea. Diriyah, His Royal Highness wanted it to be a walkable city. He didn't want the kinetic energy of a Cairo or a Rome. He wanted people to meander like Florence or Fez or Marrakesh, right? So we made 20 million, you know, the Najda mud bricks are big bricks. We made 20 million of them. So all the typology on top in this beautiful pedestrian cultural city would be walkable. But underground, we put 60,000 parking spots. We put full bus loops for tour buses and deliveries and everything. But we have a circulatory system down below that by 2030, only electric cars on top, if you're staying in the hotels or the residences, because the carbon cars, which you still will have by 2030, that CO2 doesn't go into the atmosphere. All right, now you can park your car, you can get your reservation, you can go to any hotel, you can book anything. That's technology. Now the children, to go into the museums, they can, with AI, they can see exactly every king, what life was like 300 years ago. And then they can go to the actual 300-year-old UNESCO site, preserved in perfect harmony, all using organic materials, right? So what the Crown Prince has shown is you can protect your personality, your national identity, traditionally, with all the smart city modern technology. And Diriyah, not 4 buildings, Diriyah received the largest platinum LEED certification, 4 kilometers. Diriyah just finished, ready for this? 200 million construction man hours without a fatality. So we're safe, happy staff, just won best place to work 4 years in a row. I'm going to steal the great Amal's daughter from Neom. You know, people are coming.
But there is competition, good.
Right, we're going to come, everybody's enjoying, and this is the beautiful balance, preservation and being proud of your past, which defines your future, driven by technology.
Thank you, Jerry. Justin, could you give us a little bit on maybe Bechtel and infrastructure in the kingdom? I know you guys have worked on NEOM, and maybe you could touch on the big announcement last week around the l'Avion, the airport.
Sure, I'd be glad to, Adel. I mean, I think it's worth first saying that, you know, Bechtel's been working in Saudi Arabia for more than 80 years. Our first project was the Ras Tanura refinery in 1943. It's our second largest presence globally outside. It's our largest presence outside the United States, but if you include the United States, it's our second largest presence globally for Bechtel professionals. So it's a very important market for Bechtel. It's been a very important partnership for more than 80 years now. We've been, in our time in Saudi Arabia, active across all major economic sectors: energy, pipelines, power, mining, infrastructure, aviation, telecoms, and, you know, now tourism as well. I'm going to start just by, I will get to the airport announcement, which is it was very exciting for us. But I do want to acknowledge a program that we very recently inaugurated. It's not per se a Vision 2030 program, but because it began in 2013, but this is the Riyadh Metro. And Bechtel led the consortium that delivered lines 1 and 2 of the Riyadh Metro, which is just a absolutely spectacular system. And if those who haven't yet experienced it, I'd urge you to do so. It's really transforming the capital. And I think it's enabling that vision, the Vision 2030, and transforming lives and the lived experience in Riyadh. And it's worth also pointing out that the way that the Riyadh Metro was developed is just so unique, and it really reflects that same ambition. They determined to build 6 lines simultaneously, all at once, from nothing. I mean, no one does that. And so now we have 6 lines in the landscape of Saudi Arabia that have really transformed the city, made access across the city available. Most systems, as you think, would develop one line, and then they add to it another line, another line, another line. Over time, you progressively build a system. In Saudi Arabia, they did this all at once. It's a huge system, very complex system, and it's a beautiful system. It features iconic stations, including the Zaha Hadid-designed KAFD station, which Bechtel had the opportunity to help construct at the centerpiece. I mean, it's really just a spectacular system. So I have to start with that. We're looking forward, of course, to the expansion of the system, the Line 2 extension, and then Line 7, which, as I understand, will take the system to Diriyah.
I've got 5 metro stations, Ambassador. Thank you.
So there again, you know, it's fitting into the Vision 2030, these projects. It's really, really exciting. With the King Salman International Airport, yes, Bechtel, we were able to announce at the business forum that we will be managing the delivery of 3 terminals. It's a terminals package, huge project, another giga project in the kingdom, part of Vision 2030. This will include the new home of Riyadh Air, so a bespoke terminal for the Riyadh Air, which is a very exciting new development and contributor to the vision, as well as sort of the conveyance of tourists and for Saudis globally and in the country. We're also involved in the New Murabba project, another Vision 2030 big housing project. I think that's also worth acknowledging here. Part of Vision 2030 is this significant increase in housing across the kingdom, and not just in Riyadh, through these really ambitious programs through Roshan and through in Jeddah and in other cities. New Murabba is a big new community in the northwest of Saudi Arabia that we are helping to project manage. So that's a very, very exciting project. And in addition to what you mentioned before, Bechtel's work on at NEOM on the spine, which is the enabling infrastructure next to the line, and then also a major regional infrastructure scope that we've had as part of the NEOM build out. And then finally, we are project managing. Actually, we're part of the project management team. It's an integrated team at Trojena, which will be the mountain resort, the winter resort property up in the mountains of NEOM, which is very, very exciting.
Justin, what is your Saudization rate, and how many employees do you employ in the kingdom? Do you have those numbers?
So we're over around 2,000 total employees in the kingdom. We are platinum for Saudization, which is the percentage somewhere between 25 to 30, I believe, is the Adel. I should have the figures at my disposal. We operate as a construction company in Saudi Arabia, and so the Saudization figures are adjusted depending upon the sector you're in.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the adjustments that the leadership has been taking to ensure that the Saudization works in complementary to the delivery of the projects. Actually, our Saudi employees have been just hugely impactful in the company. And when they join Bechtel, of course, these will be Bechtel employees. So we look forward to many of our new Saudi colleagues traveling outside. Already, many are leaving Saudi Arabia to go on to Bechtel projects in other countries. So it becomes a pipeline for us for new, exciting talent, not just for our projects in Saudi Arabia, but globally. And if you'll just indulge me to mention one more project that we're involved in. And again, it's not per se Vision 2030, but this is the Jubail project we've been involved in for 50 years. And some people say it's kind of the original giga project in Saudi Arabia. It came out of the vision of King Faisal in the 1970s. And Bechtel's been involved from the very beginning. Today, it contributes up to 8% of Saudi GDP. As you know, it's one of the largest petrochemical complexes in the world. And it's becoming also the support and nearby the Ras Al Khair project, which will become the focal point for much of the manufacturing, the shipbuilding that is part of the Ministry of Industry's objectives to grow the industrial production in Saudi Arabia, again, as part of Vision 2030. So we're very proud of that long association with Jubail as well.
It sounds like you guys are quite busy in the kingdom.
Very busy.
And we didn't even get onto minerals and the trillions of dollars and where Bechtel might play a role. Amal, I wanted to come to you. Could you just give us a little bit on sort of the VC space, what we need to know for the non-VC and VC specialists? Maybe an example of a company that's done well. And if I may, I don't know if Deemah might be able to speak to this. Justin spoke of the metros. Do you Saudis actually take the metro, or do you just love your cars?
Go Deemah.
Well, actually, we do. There's one in front of our office, and actually, we're using it constantly. So yes, we do. We enjoy it.
Adel, I'll tell you something. We had crowd at the Zaha Hadid that the ambassador said, Ambassador Justin. We had major crowd control issues on the metro now. Because on days off, Thursday nights, Friday nights, where everybody's out celebrating, we've got thousands of people joyriding because it's so beautiful that people just go on it to have some air-conditioned fun. All the kids kind of meet each other. I don't want to use the word hookup, and maybe that's too much of a New York thing, but they're all hanging out. They love that metro, that now we have crowd control problems on days off.
You know,
I agree.
officially, Adel, if I
Please.
may, officially, my teenagers, 10th graders, they're twins. They actually take the metro every day to school. It's shorter. It takes them 20 minutes. If it was in a car, it takes them 40 minutes. So
Wow.
they're enjoying it.
So there is a time dividend as well as a comfort and a social one. Thank you. Amal, I stand to be corrected of any of my fallacious assumptions. Amal, please give us a little bit on the VC.
Absolutely. I think one thing to know, or a few things to know. First of all, the commitment of the Saudi government towards, the digital economy, as Deemah illustrated, and technology in particular, have emerged into creating fund of funds, right? So since actually the inception of the vision, you would see Saudi venture capital company, you will see JADA investing in regional and global funds, which actually contributed to have many of these actually big funds investing now in the region. And that helped, expand the journey from idea all the way you want to see the exit. In any ecosystem that you want to build, you want to make sure that the company can grow and really realize, the right type of financing that they can get. And that's exactly what's happening today. I sit on the board of the Venture Capital Private Equity Association, and part of our work is lobbying, and making sure that all regulations are clear. There is the new Saudi company law that's been adjusted just to fit all these new companies. And the exciting part, Adel, that the draft of the law have been released to the public, and that's how they do it every time. They release it to the public, people give comments and feedback, the VC community gives feedback, and then it gets released after revisiting all these notes, getting the feedback of the customers. And I think this loop could give a lot of comfort for anyone who's coming internationally to look at this region, that there is actually a lot of adjustments just to match and maybe hopefully localize all of the regulations and all of the paths that we're trying to do. Second component, we do have a lot of companies that are even closing, some pilots and actual projects with the private sector, corporations and governments as well. And that you couldn't see, a decade ago. But today, this is the best testament to say that technology companies are here to stay. They have a place in the market, and they are competing with traditional businesses and companies that used to get these contracts, from the big players. So I think this is an important actually component as well that we need to highlight. And, as part of what I do, we also run, an accelerator program. We're one of many. We're not the only ones. But what all these accelerator programs that are doing in Saudi, bringing these companies to be more actually aware of what's happening in the kingdom, unlocking networks, even introducing them to government programs. There's the National Technology Development Program that avails more than 12 or 14 products just to attract companies, from the idea, subsidizing salaries, giving offices, unlocking, some investors community. So I do believe that there is a very valuable ecosystem that's being formed, and it's becoming deeper and deeper by the minute. And, companies actually do feel that and do see this. And as we are in this call, I have actually someone who shared with me an interesting report, they're saying that it just released the Startup Blink 2025, actually just got released, and Saudi was chosen as Country of the Year for 2025 for its all technological efforts, that have been done. And they got the first actually place, globally, competing with a growth, that's more than 200% since actually it started being in that list. First place in healthcare technologies, second place in logistics and insurtech, and delivery apps, which we're very good at, and we're very, using those. And third place in digital payments. We are pretty much achieving and exceeding global actually players, with digital payments, where the country keeps announcing how much we shifted to digital. And there is a reason why this is so great and it's happening super fast, that Saudi doesn't have those legacy, kind of traditional payments in some of the stuff. So when it was first introduced, it was introduced digitally, which made the adoption so much higher for everybody. And you can go obviously to the rest of it, fifth in electronic and gaming and so on and so forth. So I do believe that the formula and the ecosystem is coming together. People need to see all of these pieces coming into it and creating that ecosystem, and funding possibilities are happening. Companies that are doing well, man, I can't favor, but I can name a few, saying that there are so many great companies, that are out there.
One question is when you're investing, is AI cannibalizing the investment space in a VC space now, or what does that look like? Like how much are you focusing on other traditional sectors, or what does this look like?
I think we at Sanabel 500, we look at all sectors, to be honest. The AI is becoming part of every company, Adel. So I cannot say it's actually cannibalizing. Even our companies that have started 3-4 years ago are now shifting and creating, some sort of form of AI. The question is, do they have AI at the core? Are we ready to do infrastructural models? Is there actually potential to do this? There are a couple. We do have Lisan and Tela. Those are companies that deals with corporates. They have contracts with governments. They develop their own LLMs, and they have deeper know-how in the region. But I can't say that we focus only on it. I do believe that we need the wider, actually, spectrum. And since we're an accelerator, we actually touch on different ones. We have InsurTech, we have PropTech, we have Ijari, which is one of the rent now and pay later. So you're seeing these new business models that are evolving every day with the globalization that's happening actually in Saudi, the rental models, all of these models. So there's a lot actually that's been going. AI is the talk of town. We cannot actually ignore the fact that artificial intelligence is playing a huge role. It will be used in all of the sectors, but it's important to know as we are growing, we will require, multiple actually sectors to invest in. And we're sector agnostic, obviously, at this stage.
Thank you, Amal. Because I'm a bad timekeeper, because we want to get to the questions from the audience, which have been coming in. I want to ask you all, just very briefly, could you give me one single example of collaboration from your area of focus between Saudi Arabia and the United States of America? It could be, a specific product, service, a partnership, just something. Deemah, over to you first. And when is the US going to become a member of DCO?
Well, hopefully soon. Let's see. Well, we do have a lot of technology companies from the US that are observers to the organization, the likes of one that I'm going to mention as an example, which is NVIDIA. The partnership of NVIDIA with either Sadaya or either Aramco Digital and now Humane, enabling Saudi to become a provider for computing power, not only for Saudis, but for the brain power from all over the world to come in and to start developing local content and innovations that can solve challenges in the world. So this is a great partnership that we see that is not going to serve only Saudi, but it's going to serve a lot of countries in the region and globally as well.
Thank you, Deemah. And just to de-abbreviate for our colleagues in the audience who are less familiar with Saudi, Sadaya is the Saudi Data and Artificial Intelligence Agency. Jerry, can you give us one? I know you could say Jerry is the link between New York and Saudi, but give us something else.
Well, I'll prove to you that I'm the link because from what I understand, I'm the only Bedouin from Brooklyn. So that's a pretty good link. But, for us, it's very easy because we're doing business with 83 American companies. And obviously in tourism, it's easy because all of the major American hotel companies, tour operators, most of the major design firms, obviously in tech, very deep with all of the major tech companies, our marketing, the joint ventures we have with all of the major American media companies, technology companies. So we've got a lot going on with America right now. As I mentioned, the president was thrilled because we're 83 American companies and counting, but the best and brightest minds from a creativity point of view, a hardware point of view, software point of view, all over, very, very close relationship between Diriyah and American enterprise.
Absolutely. And you just gave me a mini idea. I'll text you later, but your memoirs, From Dumbo to Diriyah, I just came up with that. So I hope you like it, Jerry.
Don't give up your day job, okay?
Try not to. Justin, of course, beyond the obvious.
No, I'll stick with something pretty traditional. Sorry, Adel. And that would be the increasing role that Aramco is playing in the United States energy sector. investments into LNG facilities, refining facilities, the offtake agreement with Next Decade, which is a very significant development. It shows that Aramco has global ambitions, and that's just a natural outgrowth, I think, of the position that Saudi Arabia has had historically in energy markets. And I think the linkage between, the U.S., where we have a very thriving energy sector, matching that with the traditional capabilities, expertise, and capital and capacity of Aramco is a terrific partnership to take sort of, as the administration likes to put it, U.S. energy dominance to a kind of it really enhances and then grows the partnership in an important way. Maybe it's a little bit of an underappreciated way, given that people are focused on the more kind of interesting higher tech sectors and that sort of thing. But it's still a really important component to the bilateral relationship that I think should be acknowledged.
Thank you. Amal, VC collaboration of the US.
I mean, I am living one, obviously. 500 Global is a US-based, venture capital based out of Palo Alto. And basically, we started this partnership with Sanabel Investments, a subsidiary of the Public Investment Fund. And this actually panned out into a whole big range of activities that's happening in terms of investment, acceleration activities, educational one in the venture capital and angel investing scheme, early idea stage, actually training some boot camps. So we've actually focused a lot on community building, bringing, the whole diversification element, to the kingdom. And at the other side is just focusing on these investments really and localizing as much as possible and figuring out the means of business development and where do they fit, what is the right timing. And honestly, it's been quite a journey for me and for so many others, for my team and for the startups that we worked with. And I hope that we're continuing to do, the impact that we actually seek to do. And by the way, the reason that this partnership is actually growing and happening is actually Deemah. She started this partnership in prior, and I actually came later on. So I have to give her lots of gratitude towards initiating this discussion prior to me actually coming into the role.
Oh, thank you, Amal. Actually, the important is the scale, and you took it and you scaled it way up there. So congratulations on all the strides that you're creating. You're a role model for all Saudi women, myself included, and we look up to you. Thank you.
You're a role model, and we'll make it all together. We're definitely all making it together.
Absolutely. I remember the last time I saw Amal and Riyadh, some of the companies that you'd shared were really truly interesting. There used to be sort of idea around a lot of copy pasting, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but a lot of it was, real homegrown problem solving softwares, etc. So that was awesome. I'm jumping to colleagues in the audience. I've been keeping bad time. We'll started a couple of minutes later, so go a couple of minutes beyond if everybody's okay with that. We have a question. I think this is directed to Mr. Inzerillo. And the question is around how do we see policy sharing and coordination between giga projects in the kingdom? And if I may touch on a couple of these just so that we could do a little round robin. We have a question which could be maybe more Deemah, more ML, but it's how is Saudi leveraging its collaboration with the US around US-China relationship in AI, and how are you managing that? So maybe you could speak to this red versus blue equals purple and what that looks like. And then we also have a question around VC growth, Series A, B, C, what does this look like? So if we could touch on those, and Justin, if you'd like to come in on how you see the Giga project piece, please. Jerry, if we could go to you first.
Two major points about the Giga projects. One very popular question is, why have you announced so many Giga projects? Well, it's a very, very good question, because if you're going to go into the top 10 of global tourism visits, which is the aspiration of His Royal Highness by Vision 2030, and you're in a very big country, you don't just get to 150 million visits by not having a diversification of the Giga projects. So the Giga projects are very unique because they don't compete with each other. They actually complement each other, right? So even if you just look where there's several Giga projects in Riyadh, let's take two. Let's take Diriyah, 300 years of history, culture, heritage, diplomacy. But pop culture is fun. It entertains a society that's healthy, educated, and has a high self-esteem is going to be a very, very happy society. So our project of Diriyah on the other side of Riyadh now will house our Olympic village, right? As we produce more and more Olympic capable athletes, right? The athletes become role models. They become heroes to children. It makes children want to do sports, which is very good for physical health, right? So NEOM is less of a giga project than it is a laboratory. What's quality of life in 2040, 2050? What are we doing in the Red Sea? What are we doing in the empty quarter, right? There's so much abundance here. So the reason why we announced so many giga projects is because they all have their own purpose, their own interconnectivity, their own personalities, right? And then you would think that with the giga projects, it's only human nature that we would be in competition with each other. Well, this one's better than that one, and that one's better than this one. Nobody has time for that. All of the projects, the CEOs get along unbelievably well, because when the boss works an 81-hour week, you work an 82-hour week, right? So we all know the commitment and the passion that's going into 2030. So we're all very supportive of each other because we're all interdependent. So they have different personalities. Think about a big house that has 20 rooms. Everybody lives in a room, but you're all part of one house. And that's what Vision 2030 is. And the giga projects play a spectacular role, first and foremost, in looking after our own in terms of quality of life, employment, training, different opportunities, welcome people from all over the kingdom, all over the Gulf, all over the world to witness Saudi hospitality. So because a lot is needed to hit our numbers over the next 10 years, which we will. And then the other thing is that they complement each other because they all have unique purpose and unique personality.
Thank you, Jerry. Deemah, could you speak to the sort of managing US versus China, particularly tech competition, and what that means for Saudi Arabia, including in third countries, may I add, for the likes of the DCO?
Well, Vision 2030 is a blueprint. It is a blueprint of what is possible when ambition is matched with action and when partnership is with purpose. And I want to double down on purpose and impact. We have seen the relationships of Saudi Arabia, the diplomatic relationships, very strong with both countries. And we go back to the purpose, whatever would serve the citizens and whatever would serve the Mission 2030 and the objectives of economic and social prosperity, then definitely Saudi will go ahead with very neutrally and again serving the citizens and the people. When it comes to DCO, it is the same. We're looking at how can we progress and accelerate the growth of digital economy for our member states, and that to happen needs cooperation from all angles and from everyone to put hands in hands together and learn from one another and share.
Thank you, Deemah. Amal, could you very briefly touch on the Series A, B, C?
Absolutely. When we started investing, and the kingdom actually in technology, it was early on, it was about creating deal flow. That's why you wouldn't see it didn't make sense for a Series A, Series B, Series C actually funds to exist. That's why you see a lot of seed funds, available. But in the last 2 years, we started actually to see, a list of VCs in Saudi and in the region that are investing in Series A and Series B now. And they're going really strong with good tickets that starts from 5 million to 20 million. I can speak of 500 launched also a growth fund. So we're announcing a couple of deals as well that are in growth stage. So there are a few funds that started to have, a vehicle that has a seed, and they invest in them and they capture the opportunity early on. And then they have their growth actually vehicle, which is another completely new fund that does this. It is true that we're still, at the very beginning when it comes to that, but there are a few deals that were announced that are Series A, Series B and C as well in the last year, actually. So whomever asked that question, do reach out to me, on any platform. And I'm happy to list names, that you potentially can go to in Saudi. And they do invest globally, regionally, and in Saudi. So there is a wider, actually, momentum if it fits their thesis, obviously.
Thank you, Amal. We're wrapping up. Justin, if you were to advise your former employers, the US government, State Department, on one thing they can do to galvanize US-Saudi relations, particularly in a commercial realm, what would that one piece of advice be?
Well, far be it from me, but Adel, I think what we just saw, honestly, that kind of reaffirmation at the highest level of the US government, sending a signal to the business community that this is a valued partnership between the two leaders, the two leaderships. And that then kind of gives the business community, I think, the guide and the way forward to approach we will always be there. We'll always be there in the good times and then sometimes the not so good times. But it helps really to have, in any relationship, by the way, business is generally out there in the sort of in the background sometimes. But when we have the really strong affirmation of the two leaderships, that gives us the playing field from which to really grow. And I think as the colleagues on the panel have cited so many examples where there are these really strong partnerships emerging in so many different sectors, that's an indicator really of what needs to be done. That's what we need to see, those signals. And we just had a great one in the visit, and we're looking forward to real opportunity in the months and years ahead.
Thank you, Justin. Before I thank my colleagues, Jonathan, Will, Josie, in the usual way, we have a tradition, Deemah, Jerry, Justin, Amal. You find $100 million under Jerry's desk or Deemah's desk or Amal's desk or Justin's desk. Where do you put those funds in Saudi Arabia? And you cannot say your own sector or giga project. Where do you put that money? Deemah, go.
I would put it in education.
Education, perfect. Just Jerry?
Training.
Training. Oh, wow, so we've got crossover. Justin?
I would say history and culture.
Awesome. Amal?
Upskilling, man, everyone. We need talent. We need to bring them up to the level. So I do join actually the sentiment, of the education, training, upskilling the youth. This is what will change it. It's people. The vision was created for the people, and the people are actually leading the way. So this is the best actually place to put any investment in.
I really was inclined to say pizza for the population, but I didn't think it would play well.
PP, pizza and people, in order, it's a startup vibe. So it works actually. Really well.
Pizza and policy to support human capital. Human capital is king, indeed. Guys, that was fantastic conversation. I can't thank you enough. I thank you, Your Excellency Deemah AlYahya, Mr. Jerry Inzerillo, Ambassador Justin Siberell, and my dear friend as well, Amal Dokhan. And in absentia, I cannot see them, but I'd like to thank Josie and Jonathan and Will, and thank you everybody for joining us. Looking forward to more conversations. And you are, I believe I can say this on behalf of my friends in the kingdom, you are most welcome even in the summer months. Have a great rest of the week.
Come visit us. Only one today. Come visit us.
Absolutely.